I want to tell you today, this is one of the best podcasts we've done. Can't wait for you to come in and join Rick and I as we talk about standing your ground and the power to be able to do that. We'll see you in here real soon. Hello, everybody. Here we are again, Remnant Revealed, the long-awaited podcast.
That
the
is
one you've
right.
been waiting on.
The long-awaited.
Yeah.
People are giving us grief.
They're giving us grief. I think they
We've
don't
had some
realize.
delays
Yeah. We had
between
some
episodes. And they're giving
equipment
us grief.
issues, travel issues,
Just availability.
all that. And it's not like this is the only thing we do.
Sure it is. We
Every
sit in
day.
this room.
That's all we do.
it. Yeah.
Just talk.
But it's a great blessing.
But it is, and we love doing it, and we love doing it for you, and we're glad that you want it so much that you give us grief when we don't have a fresh one. I think we do.
Yeah. No, it's been awesome. You've been doing okay?
Yeah. Yep, staying after it.
Good.
Working.
It's been a long haul.
It
hasn't
has been a long. Yeah, it's been a long haul.
I think everybody's feeling that, though. I think everybody's kind of been going all out.
Yeah.
I was reflecting again, just thinking about the last 4 years. Wait a minute.
Say that one more time.
The last 4 years.
The last 4 years. We've been doing this podcast for 4 years.
Well, that too. But there's been a significant shift
In the last 4 years.
since 2020 in a lot of ways.
Oh, dude.
So
It's
I was thinking
crazy.
about that, and I just feel like you think about all the things going on in the world, and I think people are just kind of at a point where they're like, let's get something going here, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Whatever's going to happen, let's get it on.
Let's just get it
And
done.
To get through it.
Yeah.
And I think that sense of anxiousness, feeling on edge for a lot of people, is wearing people down, which again I would suggest is maybe by design, but destabilized by design. And
100%.
I think it's taken a toll on folks. Yeah. But I think it's also reminding us that we need faith now more than ever.
We need help.
In the middle
we need
of
God.
all of that.
Yeah.
So, we are seeing some interesting turns of events, you know.
Some trends.
Well, and just a lot more public displays of faith that are occurring in large groups, and people kind of coming out into the streets and out of the four corners of their church buildings.
Yeah, buddy.
Which is what I've been
that's
encouraging
what
people
we've been
to
saying
do
for a long time.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's been a silver lining in all of this.
It's a really good thing.
But there comes a point where you've just got to decide what you're going to do. Are you going to cave in from all this pressure, or are you going to stand firm and
you're going to buckle down
and shoulder it?
Put your helmet on and
stand the line.
Stand the line.
That's right.
It's great. Well, I don't know what you've been doing recently, but
not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. Just twiddling around and twirling like little ballerina. Well, just got back a couple of weeks ago from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which was just below Butler, which is where
that's right. Had the
former
assassination
president,
attempt. Yeah. Okay.
So
you were actually there right around during that time, right?
Like within 2 days.
Okay.
Afterwards.
After it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our hotel, of course, was filled with reporters and newscasters and
really? That had come in for it?
Camera crews, and
why were you in
doing
Pittsburgh?
Interviews. It was the 51st annual training seminar. It's kind of like the conference, 51st conference of the International Conference of Police Chaplains.
Gotcha.
It's the oldest and only international conference of police chaplains.
Really?
Yep. And so we reach across nations.
So that's called ICPC for short.
ICPC for short. And
tell people a little bit about that. And we've talked about ICPC a couple times, just kind of in passing, in conversation. But that really, I don't think many of our officers fully appreciate what all goes on within ICPC.
It's it's ecumenical, so it covers many faiths.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And it is extremely well put together and processed through educational purposes to help chaplains become the very best chaplain they can with the most knowledge of how to do that role in a police.
That's what I was going to say. Not just chaplains, but
police chaplains specifically.
And so it's really a training and educational group.
Correct.
So do they, for all intents and purposes, do they provide some kind of standardization?
That is correct.
Training?
It's credentialing, not certification.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's the difference in the word.
Yeah, so that's important.
Yeah.
So it's a process for credentialing police chaplains, not just in the U.S., but really all around the world.
That's correct. With a standardized teaching training process.
So you have levels of credentialing.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not just to be credentialed as a police chaplain. That's just the bare bones basics.
That's right.
But then there's ongoing
training, development,
and credentialing
to take you into, of course, hopefully your older years of teaching and training and continuing to mentor. And
do you know what those levels are called? Is it like
there's basic,
intermediate?
No, there's basic, there's senior, there's master, and then there's diplomate.
Diplomate.
And as you get into the last two stages, a lot of times those are all of them have how many RTS or ATS that you have attended. RTS, regional training seminars,
right?
Which is within your region. Everybody,
before. Yeah.
You've spoken at that number 4. And that's your region where you're located and where you have to serve a department. And then there's the annual training seminar, which is where people come in from overseas, all around the country, and from international
I think
countries.
it's important for coppers especially to realize that there is some significant structure behind that type of chaplaincy training. For some agencies, I think maybe officers, especially if they've got a new chaplain, or a chaplain that's been there but doesn't have a lot of street cred. I think they just think that sometimes departments just go and find a preacher from somewhere and say, hey, you're our chaplain. There's a lot more to it if folks go this route.
Right, there needs to be. That's right,
yeah.
And there needs to be, because
that's good to know.
Sometimes, even though a pastor or a minister or an imam or somebody, a rabbi, can work well within that, or a priest, it's still, you've got to adjust your mind and your life to an officer need and mindset.
No doubt.
So
just starting,
you're not going in preaching to your congregation, right?
Yeah.
But you need to have that understanding. You're going to deal with suicides. And you're there for the community as well.
Sure.
So you're going to be with officers or help them during major crises in the community as well as in their own personal life. So it's very important to know how to do that and the language that's necessary and all the things that you will encounter. It's very good for the chief or the sheriff to be able to know that person's been trained.
Sure.
That's what officers do all the time. They're trained all the time.
So that's what you were doing in Pittsburgh.
In good old Pittsburgh.
Well, was it a good conference?
It was. It was really, really well put on. And
friend of the channel, Jim Bontrager, who has been on the podcast.
Yep, and Frank O'Laughlin, they presented.
But Jim Bontrager is now the president.
That's correct.
Of the ICPC, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, very good. An alum of the R&R channel.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
And they presented. We had a massive upgrade in our branding and in the internet phase and all that. I mean, it really was fantastic. Well, so I brought you a couple of things.
Oh, okay.
So
awesome.
This is a commemorative coin.
Okay.
From ICPC. You'll see the logo on the back. And you're a chaplain with Billy Graham, but I thought you might like that.
I like it a lot.
And then also I think there's a little, there's a little pin in here.
I like the praying hands on the back.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Thank you for that.
So this says, be present, be available, listen well. Chaplaincy is a shared sacred space. Your officers need you. ICPC.
That's cool.
Region
Very
5.
cool.
Yeah,
All right.
Nice little pin. Get
Very
that
nice.
back
All
for
right.
you.
Thank you.
And
I'll use that.
And then I brought you a very, very special friend
Okay.
that you can
I can see it in your eyes. This should be good.
that you can hang on your. This is going to help your attitude. This is going to keep
Okay.
you.
Okay.
This is going to keep you. This is called positive potato. And this,
Okay.
so you have to read it so everybody knows
Positive potato.
how it's going to help you.
I may be a tiny potato, but I believe in you. Go do your thing. Tiny potato has your back whenever you need a pick-me-up.
There you go.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Very cool. I
so-
hand out crosses, but
yeah.
you hand out tiny
Hey,
potatoes.
Spud.
All right.
Yeah, this is Spud.
Well, very cool. Thank you,
No,
man.
a chaplain had that.
I see that on the
And
back. Yeah.
and I said, I got to take that direct because,
Adopt a cop.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
probably going to throw his pen at me, but with all the ribbing that I take between you and our producer, every once in a while I got to get a shot in.
Shout out to all of our friends at ICPC. Very
Yeah,
cool. Congrats on
wonderful
another
shout out. Thank you.
big biannual conference there. So what else is going on?
Well, I want to talk today about standing your ground. I know, the world talks about all kinds of different doctrines and all that, and the stand your ground laws and all these stuff that people get into. But I really want to talk about standing your ground as a police officer, standing your ground as a believer, finding the reason and the understanding of why you need to stand your ground, especially today. We don't need to be given any ground up.
Well, that's what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the stresses of current environment, right? But
Yeah.
that at some point you just got to decide, are you going to shoulder it and stand firm,
Yep.
or are you going to cave?
I was talking to a friend of mine this morning at 3 a.m.
Okay.
Wonderful man in Israel, loading up, getting ready to have to deal with rockets flying into that nation, probably all day, all night, or ever how long. And he said, I've realized that we're just going to have to stand and deal with this, and do our best to protect our families, our homes. And he's been a soldier for a very long time. It struck me in my heart about a story in 2 Samuel
Okay.
about another man. He was a soldier, one of the key soldiers and leaders for King David. 2 Samuel chapter 23. His name was Shammah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. His dad was Agee, the Hararite. Agee. And that
I'm looking at whatever you keep clicking.
his name means fugitive.
Fugitive.
So his dad was a fugitive.
Shammah's dad was a
Shammah's
fugitive.
dad was a fugitive, probably running from King Saul at the time,
Okay.
because he became one of David's mighty men.
That's a cool title.
Yeah, it is cool, isn't
Yeah.
it? Now, when these men came to David in the cave of Adullam, the Bible says they were in debt, distressed, and discouraged.
I know some of those
Thanks for that. Later, though, you read that it says, and they made him their captain, and they became his mighty men. So they went from those 3 D's to the M, mighty,
Okay.
to the 2 M's. Shammah was one of them, and maybe today in an officer's heart or mind, he or she, they're thinking, is this worth it? Why is this even worth standing?
Not maybe. Many are. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, people feel like they're at a fundamental fork in the road in the profession of, is this really still worth it? But remember, it's been so demeaned over the last 4 years.
Again, here we go, right?
We said it in a previous episode, but when you take the purpose out of the policing, you drive the police out of the profession.
Purpose. That's right, and out of the profession.
Yeah.
And I want to say to you today, and I know I'm not convincing you because you know where my heart's at, but I want to say to you today, we have to stand on the purpose of the calling that you have.
Stand your ground.
You got to stand your ground. Now, when if you read this story, and we look at verse, let's say we start looking at where did I go? Verse 10.
Okay.
Chapter 23. It says, he arose, struck the Philistines. Verse 11. Sorry. Now after him was Shammah, the son of Agee, a Harite. And the Philistines were gathered into a troop where there was a plot of ground full of lentils. Everybody knows lentils are little beans, little peas.
By the way, I like lentil soup.
I do too. I love lentil soup. My wife makes a mean lentil soup.
Yeah.
Little spice in it, little crushed red pepper.
Nice.
Ooh. And the people fled from the Philistines. So here's what's that. The people, the Israelites, the farmers, the country folk, the Philistines, the enemy has come in and has taken a piece of their ground.
Sounds like some criminal offenders, gangsters coming in and taking over a neighborhood.
That's right.
Yeah.
You've worked your butt off for it. You've worked your butt off to pay for your home. You cut the grass. You keep your street clean.
Yeah.
You get the old junky cars pulled out. You call the city and ask for help on trees that grow up. They tilled the land. They planted the seed. They put everything on the ground. And maybe in some people's minds, that didn't mean squat.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal. Why would you give your life for a bean patch?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you put yourself at risk for some food? Well, if it's the food you need to survive, it's very important. If it's the neighborhood, if it's the home you need to keep you warm, if it's the house in Indianapolis that you grew up in, if it's the place that God gave you.
Or in Pittsburgh.
To dwell. Wherever.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to say, well, I can tell you right now, you've pushed me out for the last time.
Well, you think about it, especially for our officers, I say it a lot, that we stand on the ground that's been plowed by those who came before us.
Right.
And when you think about within the law enforcement profession, incidentally, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that's where the National Fraternal Order of Police was founded. Mm. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
So in Pittsburgh...
Only because you've told me before.
The FOP was founded there in 1915.
Yep.
Think about that. That's
a long
ago.
time.
So in 1915, the Fraternal Order of Police was created. And it wasn't created by some big board of elite police officers or leaders or any of those things. It was founded on a street corner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where two beat cops, their beats came together. And those two cops, their names are O'Toole and Nagel.
O'Toole.
They would meet on that corner and they would discuss the challenges of the job and all the ways that the job sucked and all the junk they had to deal with, including crazy work schedules and uniform requirements and no real freedom from the job and all these other things. But in those discussions, they actually created the Fraternal Order of Police. So one time, so every 25 years, the national FOP is required.
Is that right? Required
for their annual conference, like you just did with ICPC, to go back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Is that right?
Back to your roots, back to where you were founded. Why? Well, think about that. Every 25 years is kind of generational.
Right.
So you'll have newer officers, newer officers. There's great value in taking them back to where the ground was plowed. In fact, when we were there for the 100th anniversary, so that would have been 2015 of the FOP, one of the things I did, I thought, we need to go back to the corner.
Sure.
And so we rented a bus, and we took our entire delegation, not for the whole conference, but for our state, back to the corner at 2nd and Flowers, where these two guys met up and formed the FOP.
Wow.
And we got a big group picture. Pittsburgh PD came in, and they shut off the street, the traffic, and we put our entire delegation in the middle of that intersection and got a huge group picture back at the very ground,
where
it's kind of like this, back at the bean patch, where this all started. And what we said was, we're going to stand our ground here on what we were founded upon and why we do what we do. And these were all active and retired officers. I still remember we did a picture where we took the most senior retired officer, the longest member of the FOP for us that was there, and the youngest, newest member.
Okay.
We put them together and took a picture of that.
That's cool.
Just to remind ourselves of all these principles you were just talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't plan on talking about all that, but it just
it works.
Clicked with me, because what you were saying, you've got to decide. I think what it comes down to is this all worth fighting for?
Yeah. And sometimes you have to decide, I'm not going to be pushed out. This piece of ground, this is what struck me so deeply, because it's also the great battle of faith, the great battle, spiritual battle in your life between God and the enemy of your soul, Satan and demons. At some point, you have to decide, this book, this kingdom that Jesus died for, is worth me getting and taking up my cross and following him for.
So let's continue to noodle that out. So when we talk about for our officers in the profession, I think when you get down and out and you're really questioning if all of this is really worth fighting for, I think there's great value in remembering those that came and have gone before you.
There you go.
Think about the officers that you knew or you know of within your own agency who laid down their life and sacrificed for the very purpose that you're supposed to be standing for today. I always say to our officers, those cops, what would they do right now in these last 4 years where it's been miserable?
Yep.
What would they do if they could? I always say this: they would come back and stand that line right alongside you.
That's right.
And fight the fight.
And if you can hear their voice just speaking to you a little, it puts some fire in your eyes.
Well, they would tell you it's worth the fight.
It's worth it.
It's
That's
worth
right.
you standing your ground. They plowed the ground.
Yep.
They may have even watered the ground even with their own blood and sacrifice.
That's right.
They're going to tell you it's worth standing there and standing the line. And so I think that would be a great encouragement to them. What you're talking about is now take that thought process and apply that to faith.
That's right.
Where there is one who shed blood for this purpose, this faith.
That's right.
This relationship with God, and that it is real. He is real.
That's right.
And it was worth fighting and dying for.
And when Jesus died, and then all of the martyrs that followed to enable you to have this.
That's right.
In writing, men died to make this, to be able to say to you, here's a book you can read.
So think about this. If folks died just for that to be possible, I also remind people, take a look at all these disciples, all these dudes, the mighty men of Jesus that surrounded him.
Thank you.
If Jesus wasn't who he said he was, if what they say they witnessed did not occur, they would have never died for it.
No.
They wouldn't die for a lie.
And we're still talking about it today.
But what happened to all of them?
Right.
Did they just go on to live happily ever
Oh, no,
after?
dude. Some of them were boiled in oil. You want to talk about a horrible death?
Yeah.
Some of them survived that
That's right.
miraculously and then was boiled again. Yeah. Some were filleted, their skin removed from their entire carcass in public with a knife, and they were so good at doing this, the human being, the martyr, the believer, stayed alive throughout the process.
Well, and think about
simply because they said, I will not recant on the name of Jesus the Christ.
And then you have Peter, who was crucified
Upside
for his
down.
faith.
Yep.
And what did he request in his crucifixion?
Yep.
To hang him upside down
That's
because
right.
he didn't feel worthy
That's right.
to be crucified in the same manner of the Jesus and the Christ that he was pointing to, that he was dying for. You see what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So
these were not wimpy little weenie men who were anemic and weak and could barely get by.
It's even bigger than that, though.
Yeah.
You're not going to die for a lie.
That's right.
That's the point.
That is the point.
Okay, so now take that. Now go back to what we're talking about with officers. These officers before you that laid down, these officers whose names are on that wall.
Yep, I was thinking about that
Right?
just as we were talking. Yeah.
They didn't die for a lie.
No, they did not.
They didn't die without a purpose.
That's right.
So what was that purpose? And when you drive back into that purpose that we talked about,
Yep.
and don't allow others to drive the purpose out of the police, you hold on to it and you stand firm, big and mighty things change.
So it was not about the peas.
So go back to this.
It
What
was
happens
not
in here?
about the beans. Right?
Well,
Because you would say,
that's right.
well, dear God, why would he be so stupid to even sacrifice his life?
Remember the example I gave you of an officer that we had that was ambushed, shot, and killed chasing a car theft suspect.
I do.
And people in the community said exactly that. Mm-hmm. For a car? He died for a stolen car?
Yeah.
No.
Why didn't he stop? Why did he get out of his car? Well,
That-
you shouldn't have. You remember that one?
Yeah, that was different, but
Yeah.
same principle.
Same principle.
That's not the point.
That's not the point.
And that's not the purpose that they're standing
That's
for.
right. Shama said, it ain't about the pea patch. It's about you. I'm not going to let you push me out of this territory. I'm not going to stand down off of the line. I'm not going to have you come in as the enemy and in wickedness take my neighborhood. Let's put it in today's terms. You're not coming in and take my beat from me. It's not about what section or area of the city I'm responsible for. It's about the fact that I've been given the authority and the right to hold this land. And Mr. Wickedness, you're not coming in to my beat and take my beat.
So there's a
Boy, I feel it.
there's a verse or two before this section on David's mighty men, mighty warriors. By the way, in here with David's mighty men, they talk about 3 specific ones, but it's 3 of just 30
That's right.
that were considered his elite fighting
Oh,
force.
and they were bad
Right?
mamma jammas too. Yes, they
But
were.
earlier in the same chapter, chapter 23, now I'm in a translation that's the New Living Translation, okay?
Okay.
But this is in verse 3. Verse 3, it says this: "The God of Israel spoke. The rock of Israel said to me," I love this line. This is in the NLT version. "The one who rules righteously, who rules in the fear of God." Now that's something that I think you should hang on to as an officer. You've been ordained, anointed, appointed in this role as a law enforcement officer, whether it's a beat in a major city or a section of the county or whatever the case may be.
That's right. Might be a deputy out in the back 40.
Says the one who rules righteously, who rules in the fear of God, is like the light of morning at sunrise. You're the light in the darkness. And so if you say, is this really worth fighting for anymore? Is this really worth doing anymore? If you're not there and your light is not there, darkness wins.
Darkness wins. That's right.
And then if you jump down to verse 5, chapter 23, verse 5, I like this line here. It says that his agreement, meaning God's agreement, our covenant with God, his agreement is arranged and guaranteed in every detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's really important.
Yeah, he says he has made I think the American Standard Version says he has made an everlasting covenant with me.
What I like about this translation saying that is it's saying it's already arranged and it's guaranteed, dude. So if you latch onto and stand your ground in the purpose that he's called you to, you've got that.
That's right.
That means everything's already been arranged and guaranteed in every detail is what this says. Meaning, it's like what we've talked about before. Rather than just a hope, it's a great expectation.
That's right.
So when you say, is this really worth fighting for? Yes, it is.
That's
God
right.
ordained you to be there at this time. You could have been the one plowing the ground. You could have been the one standing in the corner in Pittsburgh in 1915, but he didn't call you to be there. He called you to be here
right
today.
Here. And everybody can walk away, even the people who've plowed the ground, planted the beans, and worked the ground. Every one of them can walk away or run from the plan of the enemy. But you and I, every officer that has that beat, it's drilled into our heart so deep, into their heart so deep, you cannot allow darkness to win. You cannot allow these wicked enemies to enter in and win. And when you reach that place where it ain't about the peas, it ain't about the stuff, it's not about the extra and all the things that come with it. It is simply about the fact you're not going to let darkness win.
That's it.
It's not going to take your beat. Oh, you become just a
mighty man or woman of
Jesus.
God.
Yes.
I mean, that's what we're talking about. You have
That's
the
right.
opportunity to be a mighty man or woman of God, standing the line, standing your ground, in your beat, in your zone, in your area of the county, whatever, in the prison that you're working DOC for, whatever the case may
it
be,
is.
You're there for a reason.
That's right.
It isn't by happenstance that you're there.
It's a calling.
And God has called you to do that,
That's
and He's
right.
called you to stand your ground.
And how good it must have felt for Shama to present that ground back to those people who ran away from the enemy. And it's not everybody is I know the term a lot of times, a sheepdog. Some people, they're sheep, right? We have flocks of sheep. Even Jesus called people in church or in his flock sheep. He was a shepherd. He talked about the good shepherd. Not everybody is called to do the same thing in the same way. How wonderful it must have been for him to look at them and say, you don't ever have to run again. Here's your beans.
Yeah.
Hey, Martha, could you make me a pot?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hungry. I fought hard for you. But, which again is why we should take care of our officers and their families in what they do to sacrifice for us as a community. They should be blessed from what they protect.
Well, and I think it's important to remember that I think in these last 4 years, it's kind of like your friend in Israel that you're talking about. I think the great frustration sometimes comes in the waiting.
Yeah.
It's like you're waiting for the really big, bad thing to happen, and it wears on you. I think what's helpful to remember is that in the waiting, God is working.
Yes, he is.
And so sometimes when God is working, we're just called to wait. We're called to stand our ground.
That's right.
And wait for him to work.
And if you trust him,
that's it.
If you trust him instead of just trusting yourself, Shama didn't just trust himself.
That's right.
He made a resolve that I have a covenant with God. I'm in this thing with David, my leader. And this is one piece of ground they're not getting.
That's right.
And I've noticed that officers who come into wonderful agreement with God and make that decision, flourish and do very well. And that's all we're saying today.
Yeah, I think when an officer realizes, hey, wickedness, evil ones, all those things, criminal offenders, they might have other parts of this city, but they're not getting this part.
But they're not getting this
They're not
part.
getting this piece of the city, this neighborhood, because I'm the one standing my ground here.
Yep.
Big transformational things happen.
And I want to tell you, there are people in that neighborhood, there are people on those streets that'll stand with you. Mm-hmm. They don't have the training, they don't have the tactics, they're not going to play the police, but I can tell you right now, there are citizens that are in those neighborhoods that are sick and tired of people taking their ground and their peace.
And you said something about when you've beyond all the accoutrements of the job. That's also beyond all the equipment that you may have, the technology that you may have at your disposal. Beyond all of that, it still always comes back to these basics. Are you going to stand your ground or not?
To these gut level.
That's it.
Pull your belt up and say, hey, not today. Yeah. It ain't happening today.
That's right.
We're done with this.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry for my intensity, but I'm just done with it.
Okay.
Right? I'm done with the enemy running over people's lives. Here's something I thought about, and this is going to be spiritual in nature. Because Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something I've learned over the years of ministry and life. If you take up your cross and follow him, you follow him into the blessing that he's promised. But a very dangerous point in any person's life who sacrifices to do what they do is to ever look back and start taking account of that sacrifice.
Of the cost.
Of the cost.
That's an important point.
Because the enemy, when he sees in your eyes or senses in your spirit that the sorrow of loss becomes greater than the gain of the righteousness that you're serving, that hook goes into your jaw and your spirit.
That's it.
And he will drag you back to where it will not be worth it.
That's the point of is all this really worth it? When you start
That's exactly right.
that game, that's when the evil one moves in and says, no, it wasn't worth it. This God you've been following, the one you said called you, must not have been the real deal here. Because
I'm not even going to that
it.
other scripture.
Right?
Because that right there is enough.
That's it.
That's it. So you got to leave all that behind.
So you got to say, when you start feeling that way, you got to say, I'm setting that aside. That's where we say, set that at the foot of the cross, right? Leave it to God, and you stand your ground. That's it.
That's right.
Well, that's really good stuff. I think it's going to land where people need it, and the timing of this couldn't be any better as we're going into the fall, coming out of the summer, doing all those things. I think there's a time of reflection that is occurring, and while there's value in that, I just want to encourage people, focus on the standing your ground and the purpose of why you're here. What you're saying is don't focus on the cost, because it will undercut you.
Oh, 100%.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And whatever the cost may be, there's a greater reward on the other side of this.
The cost will never, ever, you can never allow the cost to outweigh the call.
That's right.
The call will always overshadow the cost. It has to. Jesus endured the cross, the Bible says, for the joy that was set before him. If he lost sight of the joy, which was you and I,
that's right,
reaping the benefit of his sacrifice, he would have never gone to the cross.
He said the call
and we would have been eternally damned.
That's right. So just remember that.
Yep. Ephesians chapter 6, go there and to verse 10, start reading. You can read that on your own. It'll bless you because it tells you how to do this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, good stuff, man. Hey, just a reminder to people, follow us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it.
Please.
It's at Remnant Revealed. Subscribe there, follow us. We put updates on the recent episodes. We put little clips. We also engage in dialogue and whatnot. And then remember, we also shoot us a message on email if you want. We've got that listed in the information about the channel on YouTube and other places. And then, of course, always comment on these videos and shoot us some thoughts. It helps us generate ideas for what topics we need to cover.
If you have a
episodes.
question,
yeah.
If you have a biblical police question, thought, whatever, throw that out there to us.
Yeah, man.
Nothing's out of touch with all that. We love to hear from you. We love you, first of all, and there's nothing you can do about that ever. But give us a shout. We look forward to hearing from you. God bless you. Thanks for being with us today. I had a blast. I thought it was good.
Good message.
I wasn't too intense, was I?
Yeah, a little bit, but that's all right.
Did my eyebrows go up a lot? See you soon. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Rick and I trust that you heard something that will help your life. And if you believe that it would help others, please make sure and share. Like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when the next podcast is available. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.